Okay, Joey, whenever you're ready. Hello, everyone. I'm Meryl Evan. I'm obviously not Thomas Logan. Our founder of A11yVR is in a country where he doesn't have access to the internet right now. He was hoping to make it in time, but it's not looking good. So I'm with the show. So we want to thank Julie McPhee from the Accessibility Special Interest Group of the Internet Society of New York for providing our live stream on YouTube. All of our talks are streamed and kept on YouTube. We want to thank Mirabai Knight for providing the caption in today's meetup. We always have human captioning at our event, and thus rain or blood or drop of night stop them from getting there. And thank you to myself for helping organize these events. Obviously, I'm reading a script. And we want to thank our sponsor, Equal Entry, an accessibility consultancy that helps companies ensure the products and services are accessible, including in virtual reality, extended reality, and augmented reality apps. Now I'm going to introduce you to tonight's speaker. Alex Westner has spent more than 20 years leading product strategy at Isotope, Gibson, and Fidelity. He earned an MS from MIT Media Lab for acoustics and audio processing, and is a former electropunk guitarist. How cool is that? He's immersed himself in the most profound human problems related to audio. People who have trouble hearing are together. He co-founded Xander, setting his vision on providing relief for the 1.5 billion people around the world who struggle with the effect of hearing loss. And now Paul Mealy has spent the past 20 years establishing innovation labs at various organizations, from small startups to Version 100 organizations. Paul is an internationally published author on virtual and augmented reality and has specifically targeted developing technology solutions for children education and assistive technology solutions for all people. As the Chief Product Officer at XRAI Glass, Paul is responsible for designing experiences that up-level all user interaction and communication. Now we'll go over to Alex so you can introduce yourself. What is your company and what inspired you to create the company?
Thanks, Meryl. Thank you for having us. Thanks to the organization. This is very exciting to be here. I'm glad to share the stage with Paul to talk about this exciting new area that we're participating in. My personal story is, so your background, your introduction to me shared that, yes, I've been spending 20 years in audio, but what happened to me several years ago is I was diagnosed with a macular degeneration, so some early form of low vision. And as I was both freaking out about it and curious to figure out what can I do about that, I put my product hat on and I started researching, well, what solutions are going to be available to me if I start to continue to lose my sight. And I was thinking that as an audio person, I'm going to have to rely on audio and sound. And I looked for products, and I found there's a lot of interesting products and research and money and technologies that are being developed to suit that need. And so as a person, I thought, well, that's great. As a product and business person, I thought, well, there's nothing more I can add there. But then I started thinking, well, wait a minute. There's all these experts solving this problem, and I'm an audio expert. And what if I could help solve the opposite problem? What if I could figure out how to provide visual information for people with hearing loss in the same way that I was thinking about relying on sound for vision loss? And that's when I realized, oh, this is a very large market of people that are that have this challenge, and there are very few solutions out there to address it. So that's how this company was born, was to look at how can we use sensory substitution, how can we use vision to supplement when we can't hear. So that's the backstory of Xander. Yeah, I'll just stop there. That was a lot.
Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, sharing what Alex mentioned. Hello, everyone. So happy to be here. Happy to be speaking with everyone. Happy to have the chance to. And I think Alex's story definitely parallels mine in a couple different ways as far as the end of the story. But for me, so my father was a social worker for the state, and he worked for the Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation for 30 years or so. And so he worked with people that had experienced hearing loss, vision loss, a number of different things, and worked to help to find them jobs. And this was 40 years ago, when I think there was a lot harder than it was today, when computers weren't as familiar to people and those sorts of things. And as I was growing up, I saw a lot of that happening. My life definitely went a lot more heavy into the tech route. He is, unabashedly not very tech friendly, whereas I kind of swung way the other way and went very hard into the tech world. And growing up and seeing some of the problems that he and his clients were dealing with, I felt like, there are a lot of solutions on the tech side that could actually help out. Over the 40 years when he was working, not only just advances that we had made, but things that maybe he hadn't been able to tap into at the time. And so I do a lot of, as you mentioned at the very beginning, Meryl, I do a lot of work in the innovation space. And so in that space, very interested in assistive technologies and just technologies that can help users communicate, that can kind of basically up-level all people in different ways. And so I've posted a lot of things on my LinkedIn for people with vision loss, for people with hearing loss, lots of different experiments on that. And during that, the founder of XRAI, who is not here right now, but the founder of XRAI actually reached out and said, hey, we're actually working in very similar space to the types of things that you're looking at. And so I spoke with him, and kind of the rest is history as far as what we started to look into, which is, I think we do want to look at the broad spectrum of things, but we definitely focused on people experiencing hearing loss first and foremost. And just like Alex mentioned, what can we do on the visual side, on the technology side, to kind of help people out that are experiencing that.
Thank you both. All right, we'll get into the question. The first question I have for both of you, either one of you can go first, it's up to you. We're going to go back and forth. And we'll start with what prompted you to go the augmented reality route for making those caption glasses?
Yeah, happy to go first, Alex. From my side of things, one thing that I was really interested in, and this was one of the first videos that I had posted to LinkedIn, it's an idea I've been playing with for years, is this ability that having AR glasses, having augmented reality glasses, is going to offer us, that takes it kind of a step beyond phones. So you can do a lot of speech to text on your phone right now, but holding up your phone and walking around is not the best experience, not the best user experience. And so as glasses were coming out, I got more and more interested in, hey, how can we take this and make this an experience that feels more natural and doesn't feel as clumsy as holding up a phone. My background is in virtual reality and augmented reality. I authored the Virtual Reality and Augmented Reality for Dummies series. So I kind of had a big background to draw off of. And what I really wanted to come up with was, is there a way to take these captions and lock them to people as they're speaking? So if I were talking to someone and they were speaking back, as I looked to them, what they were saying locks to them either as, actual captions on them. And if I look somewhere else and someone else is talking, does it lock to them? And if you go to my LinkedIn, you can kind of see this, like even as simple as popping a word bubble over their head almost as they're speaking. So just having that capability, like that's something that I felt like augmented reality offered that kind of went beyond just writing captions on a phone, and even writing captions directly on the glass as a HUD. Like being able to actually put it in space, I think offers another level of communication that just on a mobile device does not. So that's kind of why I took it that direction. Alex, I'd be curious to hear yours.
Yeah, I didn't come from like an expertise in AR or VR, but I was really interested in the sensory problem, right? So, vision loss and hearing loss. And then it's funny, we were chatting before this panel about this conference that I used to go to called Project Barbecue. That was an annual audio think tank conference in Texas every year. That it was at that conference that I learned about augmented reality and mixed reality and VR, and it was really exciting and interesting, but we couldn't figure out what to do with it. So I was exposed with it. I was exposed to the technologies, but I didn't realize what a killer app for AR could be until I started looking at sensory loss, whether it's vision loss, hearing loss, what have you. And then I learned, well, AR is analyzing video, it's analyzing vision and sound and everything, and it gives you the potential to add displays and sound and haptics. I'm really interested in haptics. So that was sort of where I thought, oh, AR for as you say, Paul, leveling up, like that is the right application for AR. I mean, forget about adding cute text messages to the side of your screen. Like this is something that is actually going to change people's lives in such a meaningful way. So that was really exciting, and that's how I got into this.
Well, both of you, thank you. Next question is, what have you learned in working with customers?
What have we learned in working with customers? Just I'll start with this one. I think we had so many interesting surprises. The first one was for people who've never experienced augmented reality. Is that going to be weird to just put on a pair of glasses and see stuff floating in space? And we learned, no, it's not weird at all, which is a relief for everybody. We would put a pair of glasses on and people would say, oh, there's text floating. That's so cool. And after about 30 seconds, they would get over that. And then they would just have a normal conversation. That was just amazing to see that people could adapt so quickly. That was the biggest lesson. I think the second lesson learned in working with customers was everybody had a different opinion on exactly how the experience should work. That is kind of humbling and challenging as a product designer.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Echo your experience, Alex. One of the interesting challenges of working with augmented reality is you don't necessarily have the same patterns established that you do when you're designing for a screen. even when, you know, smartphones came out, which has probably been our biggest product leap for most people, you know, moving from a 2D computer screen to a very small, you know, 2D phone screen, people still had that reference of understanding how 2D screens worked and generally how you should be interacting with them. And so there was, you know, a knowledge gap there, but people could generally put together an understanding. They had a frame of reference for understanding how phones worked. I think for augmented reality and virtual reality and any mixed reality, it's pretty wide open. Like those best practices haven't really been established. And so to Alex's point, everyone has a different opinion and different expectations of like, oh, when I did this in space, I thought this would happen. Oh, like, can I reach out and grab this thing? Do I use this wand to grab it? Like, how is this supposed to work? And so I think, you know, customer feedback is incredibly valuable because you just have no way. How you're thinking how that something should work is probably very different than how Alex is thinking something should work. It's probably different than how Meryl is thinking something should work. And so, you know, it's both, you know, it can be incredibly frustrating at times because you'll plan something out and you'll design it and you'll say, oh, this is how, you know, this is how you use it. And then you'll see people using it in real life and you'll say, no, not like that. I like that. But no, it's super valuable. It's all good feedback at this point. I think, you know, as augmented reality becomes more mainstream and as, you know, people start to use it more and more, I do think those patterns will start to emerge. But in the meantime, I do think it's kind of these cycles of customer feedback that are the most important, and being able to kind of put those together and say, okay, looks like people expected it to work like this, so let's actually pivot this way, as opposed to, you know, this way that we planned out just isn't working, or it isn't resonating with people. So taking that feedback and being able to react to it is super valuable.
I'm not surprised to hear from both of you saying that everybody had a different opinion. That the one challenging thing about working with people with disabilities is we're all different. I mean, when you meet one deaf person, you met one deaf person. When you meet one blind person, you've met one blind person. And we all have different opinions. And I'm now telling a story about a bracelet, a vibrating bracelet. What it would do is vibrate different, it was haptics. So it's the patterns and the vibration. So it will have one pattern for dogs barking. It will have another pattern for babies crying. It will have another pattern for the fire alarm and so on and so forth. And what bugged me about this was it was expensive for one. Two, it required having another device. I'm like, I have a cell phone, I have a watch, I don't need another bracelet on top of that. And the other thing was that was very interesting. Another deaf person commented they didn't like it because it was haptic. And he said he spoke for all deaf people when we say we don't like haptic. And some of us are like, no, we don't speak for us. We like haptic. In fact, I use haptic, but I also use visual alerts like badges. You know, because I don't want to be buzzed for every single thing, then I'll never get work done, right? So it's great to have options. So based on all the different feedback you got, I'm sure it's a challenge. What are you going to do? So what have you applied from your customer learning?
Do you want to start, Paul, or?
Yeah, no, happy to start. I think what we have found and what I've found just from working in the AR space in general is you definitely need to kind of wade people into the waters of AR because, to Alex's point early on, because everyone kind of has different expectations. It's not a technology that you can just say, oh, okay, well, you know, here's our operating system, here's how everything works, like go off, you're set. It's more like you have to kind of teach along the way, and it's almost baby steps. And this is for anyone using AR for the first time. Even, you know, I'll put on different AR devices and I won't be sure. I've used 100 AR devices and I won't know how to use it because what Microsoft is doing is different than what Meta is doing, is different than what Nreal is doing, is different than what someone else is doing. And so finding a way to kind of ease people into your system, as opposed to kind of, just dropping them in and expecting them to figure out. I think that's probably been the biggest takeaway. And these fast cycles with customers as you release features, just testing them with people, again, not going 6 months to a year and trying to drop some big, all right, here's our update, everybody, because ultimately what's going to happen is, you're going to end up having a bunch of rework because nobody quite understands what you're trying to do. So those tight feedback cycles is really important, and just figuring out ways to kind of, wade people into the depths of your product. I think that's super important, at least in the AR space.
I can echo the wading people into AR. I was at a event last year, and somebody came up to me, was very interested in the glasses, tried them on. No, wait, didn't try them on, sorry. Was very interested, was talking to me about the business, and then he shared with me he was a co-founder at one of the first pioneering display companies that made AR displays. And I won't share who or what the company was, but so he's like been around AR since the beginning. And I thought, oh, well, then you know all about this technology. And so he said, well, let me try the glasses. And he tried them and he was surprised. And he's like, oh, wow, this is really cool. And I'm thinking, how could you not, wouldn't you expect this to be cool? Like, I was surprised that he was still surprised. And I guess what my experience from that, and you've been around this longer, Paul, which is like AR itself is also different for everybody. Even for someone who's been around it, you just said you want to try on different experiences because you never know what it's really going to be like. It's so new and different for everybody. And I think that's also what we learned is this has to be simple. The technology is still complicated. And the only way these solutions that we're talking about are going to work for people is if they are dead simple. It just has to be simple. I mean, I've heard from people talking to audiologists who say that the biggest problem they have with their customers with the Bluetooth the hearing aid apps, is that people don't even remember their app store passwords, and they can't even download the app to the app they can't log into the app store to even get the app because they can't remember their password. I'm like, wow, that's right away at like step one, there's already a big obstacle to overcome. And so, yeah, we really have to think about how do we continue to make these experiences as simple as possible.
So we talked about how you apply the customer learning. Now, what I like hearing from both of you is that you involve the customer throughout the product life cycle. So many companies make the mistake of involving customers after they made the product, and they ended up hating it because they never involved them. It's like, we don't need this. I mean, everybody knows about the standing with gloves, and nobody likes them. At least nobody that I know likes them because they put the onus on the on the person who speaks sign language, not on the person that's listening to them. So that's what I really appreciate about both of you, is that you're involved throughout the process. So I would like to know, what kind of feedback have you gotten at the early stages, the middle stages, and the current stages?
The earliest stage feedback, I think it was similar. It was sort of what we shared was first lesson we learned was, oh, this experience is fine. At its base core, fundamental value proposition, putting on a pair of glasses, seeing captions to supplement hearing, that works. That was great. But then the middle stages was everything else. Like, well, I want to see the captions here. I want them there. I want them there. I want them there. I want them blue. I want 4 lines. I want 2 lines. I want, all of that feedback was just, oh my goodness, that was the next level. I think the later stages, that what's emerging now for us is location. Being able to, initially you're sitting down with someone in one location, having, testing a simple environment, but boy, people are taking these glasses everywhere and they're doing all kinds of things. And so now we're learning what are the environments where the experience works and doesn't work. And that's sort of that next level. And I think for us, one of the biggest challenges that I experience more often, because even just trying to demo this to people, is connectivity has been a problem. I don't always get good internet connection. I don't always get good Wi-Fi. I went into a trade show when we went to the Augmented World Expo in June. I went into the trade show floor. As soon as I walked in, my glasses stopped working. And I was like, well, what do I do? That's crazy. I can't believe they just stopped working, because there's so much radio interference in that environment. And so that was one of the more recent challenges, is getting out to different environments has exposed some interesting new problems.
Yeah, I'll 100% agree with everything Alex said there. The one thing I would say, so to Alex's original point of, do the captions work? Are they accurately tracking as fast as possible? That's the biggest feedback, the biggest concern people always have. But once you get that base level working, it is all of the pieces, Alex, that you kind of called out. And everyone wants to tinker. Everyone wants to have this level of settings where they can say, oh, well, I want this to be a little bit more personalized to me. I want the captions here. I want them this color. I want the captions down here. I want them 15 lines. I want them 100 lines. So going back to what we discussed, a few minutes ago, being able to provide that level of base level app for somebody that just wants to put on the glasses and kind of have things work. We found that was really important, but then starting to progressively uncover all these different types of settings that they can start turning on and tweaking as they get more used to the glasses and as they get more familiar with stuff, just being able to kind of progressively disclose those things and let people kind of tune it to their own preferences. That's probably been our next biggest step as far as where we're taking things and where people's feedback seems to be pushing more and more towards. Like, as we've tightened up the foundation of the app, trying to start to uncover those progressive disclosure of, oh, as you become a power user, now you can start doing all these different things and tweaking them to your liking. I think that's probably where we're at as far as development in our app.
Before I forget, do either of you have a pair of glasses in front of you so you can show the audience? Glad I dressed up.
Yeah, I do, but I end up having to wear mine on top of my glasses. So
there we go.
So, want to share how that works, because I've tried on both of your glasses and they work very differently. So would you like to share how yours work, how to set up, what's involved?
Sure. I mean, I guess this is definitely one place that our approaches are very different. So the glasses, neither of us are making our own glasses, which is a relief because hardware is hard. So the company we're working with right now is called Vuzix. Here's a company. That's the case, Vuzix. They're publicly traded. They're in Rochester, New York. They do their own manufacturing there. But the glasses they run, they're like powered like a low-end smartphone or a supercharged smartwatch. So they have an ARM processor. They run Android. They have RAM and they have a built-in display. So basically, we're developing an app that will run on the glasses. And what we are now doing is we're putting the entire speech recognition engine on the glasses so that the customer experience would be, we would sell a pair of glasses to you. You open the box, you push the button, you put the glasses on, and that's it. So that's really the experience we're trying to deliver is to address that simplicity problem and the learning problem and the learning curve and the reliability of not connecting to the internet. We're putting everything on the glasses, and of course, there's big trade-offs with doing that. But this is the path we've decided to go down. And so when you put them on, yeah, all you do is put them on. There's built-in microphones that are pointed away from you to capture what other people are saying, and you just see the captions in a display about arm's length in front of you. We have a couple of videos on our website that show what it's like. It's kind of hard to get a camera behind the glasses. It's really challenging, but we managed to figure out how to do that so you could see what that's like.
Yeah, and from our side, so the company that we're working with the most at the moment is called Nreal for our glasses, and these are the Nreal Airs. They also have a pair of Nreal lights that have cameras on the outside. So these glasses don't have cameras on the outside, but the Nreal lights do, so they can kind of track a little bit more actively. But for the Nreal Airs and kind of our approach is we actually have an app that you can download onto your smartphone, so either iOS or Android, and that's what powers the glasses. So the glasses themselves basically are just the display. And the benefit of that is we do get the ability for users to not have to learn as much on the AR side, because they can kind of fall back to a lot of stuff on their actual device to kind of set things up and just kick off the conversation. So that's been our approach. And the theory there is that, hey, this can work. It can work for iOS. It can work for Android. It would be easy enough to roll into other apps as well. Right now, we're mainly working with Nreal, but basically anything that supports Android, we could eventually go and install on.
So our yours are standalone. I assume you have to plug in the glasses to charge them back up. How do you get software updates and all that?
So we're expecting that two paths. One is if you are a power user and you have the ability to connect to something, either Bluetooth to your phone or USB to a laptop, we'll provide an app that lets you get updates and some other things that we've been thinking about of if we can connect people, what else can we do to offer more? The other path is as we partner with audiologists and optometrists to resell the device, the professionals could also do the updates for their patients. That's the other path, which we're expecting could be just as popular as people doing it themselves. That's a good question, though. That's one of the limitations, but we're going to figure out some ways around that.
There's always good advantages, disadvantages of everything.
Yeah.
And Paul, I know I have a pair of glasses here, so I was able to play with it. And I know that there's a cable from the side. I don't have them in front of me. From the side that plug into the Android. And I don't think you want to mention about what kind of Android phone is required, because it doesn't work with just any Android, correct?
In theory, it actually works with any Android. So the way it works right now is to get the AR placement of the captions. There are specific Android devices that Nreal has on their website that you would have to purchase, one of these 20 supported Android devices or whatever their number is. But you can essentially cast, I think iPhone calls it AirCast. You can screencast from any device. So any iPhone, any Android, onto those glasses in the same way. So you would wire to your phone just like you would with the supported Android devices. Now, what you lose from that is you do lose the ability to kind of place captions in space, but you still have you would still receive captions just like you would anywhere else. So all phones are supported. Only some phones are supported for the AR specific captions.
Awesome. Okay, for our audience, What are the privacy challenges associated with these caption glasses?
Yeah, I'm happy to start there. That's definitely one of the concerns that we kind of started, like it's a foundational concern for the company. Like we want people to own their data, and there's something interesting about this idea of, hey, when I put these on and I am live captioning, like I am listening to the environment around me. And so we don't want to unwittingly bring other people into those conversations and have their conversations recorded, when they don't want them recorded. Or how do we provide that signal to let people know that I'm recording, and then what do we do with those recordings? So it's definitely something we've been working with and trying to figure out, hey, how can we let the user know that they're recording? How can we make sure that it's very clear to the user that we're not storing anything, this is all on your device? And how can we make the other participants in that conversation kind of active participants in a way to say, do we enroll them beforehand just to say, oh, if you haven't captured any voices of these people that have been enrolled, then you should just basically drop it out. So it's definitely, there's a lot of interesting things. There's a lot of interesting challenges with both with this product specifically and with kind of AR in general. And the story I always tell is there was I forget the artist that makes the giant shiny balloon dogs. There's an artist that makes the giant shiny balloon dogs. I forget who it is. And he did something with Snap, the company that makes Snap spectacles, where they placed an AR version of the giant balloon dog in Central Park or something like that. And the very next day, someone had digitally tagged, basically graffitied the giant, balloon dog, because their whole point was, hey, AR space, like, yes, I don't have to have my phone on. Like, I can kind of ignore it if I want to, but this is still public space. And their broader point was, we need to start having this discussion early of what AR means, and like, can people put what was basically an advertisement? Can people put advertisements all over? Because as these glasses lean towards something that everyone is using, is it okay if I put this on and there's now an advertisement in my house, like on my wall? I didn't say that was okay, and companies will argue that, oh, well, it's digital, it doesn't matter, you can just ignore it. But there's a lot of interesting problems that I think AR is starting to unveil that we haven't really tackled. And I think this is a really big, really interesting question that we probably can't cover inside of I think this could be a conference in and of its own to talk through this stuff, is what I would say.
I think it's interesting that privacy comes up with AR in a way that it hasn't as much with the smartphone app. I mean, we've talked about how right now there's probably a dozen great apps for my phone that I can do this now. So why have we not talked about privacy issues with recording, using a speech to text app on my phone? It doesn't come up in the conversation, but it always comes up when we talk about glasses, even though it's the same function. And is Apple and Google, are they warning users, oh, don't do that because it's privacy issues? Of course not, right? So I think it's interesting that it comes up for glasses, and there's probably some good reasons of just it being a different form factor. But so our easy approach is, well, because we're building these glasses like an appliance that it's not cloud connected, we don't have to record. Like by default, we're not actually recording any audio. We're not recording any conversations. Audio just passes through and goes away. So there really is no privacy issue at all. When we allow users to record, well, then it gets more interesting. Then we have to think about, do we educate people about two-party and one-party consent laws? We could. Again, does Apple do that? Does Samsung do that? No. You could just put your phone down on the table and turn on voice memo and start recording. And there are privacy implications of that. So it's interesting that it seems like people want us and this AR industry to take on more responsibility for privacy than the smartphone industry. And there are some good reasons for that. But it's definitely interesting that all it is a different form factor. We're just taking the technology of a phone, putting it on your head, and now privacy is a huge concern. So it is, yes, I'm not meaning to downplay. Of course, privacy is important, but it always is, and it is now. It's just this form factor is making us think of privacy in a different way.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, Alex, so I previously worked at Meta, Facebook, whatever you want to call them, and I had a coworker who was wearing glasses essentially that allowed them to record, and they were visiting their families for the holiday or something like that, and they were recording with these glasses, just their family opening presents and things like that. And then later on, I think they posted these videos online, and their family they were kind of annoyed, like, hey, wait a minute, when did you take that? Like, I didn't realize you were taking that. I think you're totally right. I think it's a form factor thing. When had this person just been holding up their phone and kind of, going like this, everyone would be like, oh, you're recording, and they would have put on their recording face, I guess. But they just didn't realize, like, oh, wait a minute, you're recording, like, because they didn't realize that was like something that triggered something in them. I think it does speak to how much utility. To me, it's a good thing that people are thinking about this, and to me, it actually speaks to, like, oh, I think this is where the future is going, and like people are concerned about it because I think they see, like, oh wait, this is going to be something that we have to think about now and kind of head off at the pass, as opposed to closing the barn door after all the animals have gotten out. So I really do think this is like a deep subject that I'm happy to hear that people are kind of digging into it early as opposed to late.
Yeah, it is a big deal. We're while I've said, yeah, the technology exists, we're actually creating an experience where we're encouraging people to capture conversations, personal conversations. So it is a big deal. And there is a responsibility we all have to make sure that that's all done safely and transparently.
So I'm a member of the W3 caption immersive captioning group, and we talk about privacy a lot. We're trying to figure out, do we get the conversation with them? I mean, you have to think about a person's hearing. You're in a network or you're in the office, you can overhear somebody else's conversation in that cubicle. Can you hear 2 cubicles over? Those kinds of things. And because you want to be equitable for those who don't hear like me, but you also want to draw the line because technology hearing and a human hearing are different. Mm-hmm. So I went one in a virtual reality environment that was really cool, where we were sitting at tables and we basically have privacy just at our table. We could not hear any of the other tables. I thought that was great. It was a control feature they had, so they could say you can only hear who's sitting at this table. That seems to make sense, but it's a little tricky when you've got people walking around, like on one of the environments that I've been in, where people are just having conversation and their captions are all over the place. So different. The closer you are, the bigger the caption. The further away you are, the tinier the captions. You can't read them. So it kind of like down. When down further away, you can barely hear it. So that's really interesting implication, And like you said, Alex, nobody's talking about privacy with the phone, with speech to text, with notes. But yeah, the glasses and the captions, there's been a lot of conversation around that. So thank you both for sharing your perspective. So I want to ask one more question before we open the floor. And that is, what do you see in the future of communication technology for the deaf, hard of hearing, and other communication-related disabilities?
I think that, I mean, to me, that's what drew me to AR is I mean, what is augmented? It's like human augmentation, right? It's like the technology platform basically adds sensors to figure out what's happening in the world, inputs, and then translate those inputs into outputs that help us understand. And I think fundamentally that's really interesting for when, as humans, if we're deficient or missing one of those senses, and we can supplement with this technology to provide that information. Boy, that's just fascinating. And I think we're just at the very beginning of that. And I think it's not a coincidence that companies like Google and Meta, in their very first big demos of what the future is like, of course, they're talking about these very applications of basic human augmentation. I think they can see that too, as much as they want to sell glasses to consumers for entertainment and who knows what. Really, the best use case is really this sort of natural human augmentation.
Yeah, I totally agree, Alex. I think for all the same reasons you mentioned around AR, again, it's in the name. It's augmented, and like we're finding that my hunch has always been exactly what you mentioned at the end of your talk, Alex, which is just yeah, games, things like that. Will those be interesting in AR? Yeah, totally will be. But it's actually the utility pieces that actually are augmenting your experience, augmenting your communication in ways that we can't necessarily think of right now or can't accomplish right now. Like that's actually going to be the killer app. I don't know that I believe in a killer app per se, but if there was a killer app, it is going to be these utility pieces that can kind of up level your communication experience with other people. And, whether that's if I'm in Spain, whether it's translating everyone's Spanish to English for me because I couldn't understand it otherwise, is it facilitating communications in some different ways? I just think there's just a wide open space of things that we can do with communication in general that are hopefully going to up level, the deaf experience, the hard of it, hearing experience, but also just everyone's experience as people. Again, as we all start wearing these glasses, I can't even begin to brainstorm like all the different ways that we'll be able to, if I'm meeting Alex for the first time and I can see information about him, like, oh, this is what Alex, here's what Alex likes. Here's essentially a hi, my name is short form that he could potentially expose to me or strangers, or there's just a million different ways that I think this could work for all people. But yeah, that would be my hope, is that, these technologies just start augmenting our experience with other people in ways that, we just don't have available at the moment.
Awesome. Thank you both. So our first question is, what tools do you use to design and prototype AR experiences? Are those tools themselves accessible for disabled designers?
I think Paul's answer is probably more interesting than mine. I think we're just developing an Android app. It's a boring 2D Android app that lives on glasses. So we're not using any specific tools because all we're doing is putting text on a screen. And so,
yeah, we use a couple different things. What I would say is Unity is probably what we use the most, and Unity can output to a lot of different devices. It's part of the reason we use it. It's also really well supported by Nreal, and they build their SDK for that. As for how well it's accessible for disabled designers, I can't personally speak to that because I've never used it in that way. But the way Unity works, it's essentially a game engine, so it does expose 3D a little bit more than just a standard development kit might. but yeah, it's a really powerful tool. You can do a lot in there. It's really good for building just VR experiences, AR experiences, MR experiences. So definitely something to look into if you're interested in the space.
Next question. What is the typical reaction when someone who was deaf or hard of hearing wears the glasses for the first time? Now, I'm sure you've had different reactions, so go ahead and share the variety of reactions you've seen.
We have a bunch of reaction videos on our YouTube channel, but really, we have one video where everybody's just saying it's so cool. Really, that's just the initial reaction. It's sort of, people just can't believe that it's just real and easy. And I've had one person say this is every hard of hearing person's dream, is to see captions of what people are saying. It seems obvious to them, and they just can't believe it's actually in front of them and happening.
Yeah, I'll echo that. The one thing I'll say, and Alex, you mentioned it earlier in the conversation, is yes, everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, but pretty much everyone loves it when they put on. It's like, oh yeah, of course, this is obvious. And then 15 minutes later, that's when they start to say, oh, it would be nice is if we could do this and this and this. And they're totally right. Like they're all completely valid requests. I think it's just like human nature to, use something and start to immediately see, start to want to tweak it in ways that you would use it within your life.
So when I first tried on Alex's glasses, I was at the conference where we met, and it was noisy, it was dark, it was outside, and I put them on. I had no idea what to expect. And while I had them on, and I was talking to Dylan Fox in front of me, when I was doing, out of habit, of course, I was trying to read his lips. And I'm trying to read the caption, and our eyes are just not made to multitask. So reading lips and reading captions at the same time is impossible. So I had to tell myself, okay, let's try again. But this time, put your mask. Dylan happened to have his mask. So I told him, put his mask on. That way, I'm not tempted to read his lips. And it was a much better experience. And then trying your glasses, Paul, was different because I got them at home. So I wasn't in an environment with a bunch of people. It was just quiet, it was just me and my family. And I was actually on with Dan, the CEO of XRAI, because he was showing me how to set them up. And yeah, thank you. And so we had no adventure. It was trying to give us a hard time. You know how technology is. It breaks when you need it most. Just like it did for Alex when it stopped working when he got to the conference. But after a while, we got it going and it's getting better, and it works every time. So it's been very interesting, very different experiences. Okay, the next question is, could you share your thoughts on the business landscape for AR and assistive technology? How do you navigate the funding for the kind of work?
This is I could talk for an hour about this. The interesting thing about fundraising for assistive technology, and it's changing, but when I first started going out to fundraise, I mentioned hearing loss and people just tune out and they think, okay, this is, seniors in nursing homes with no money. I'm not interested, pass. And even I could put up all the stats and figures how this is a very common problem and people are spending tens of thousands of dollars to solve it. And I could go on and on, but they didn't care. It was just, once you have an image in your mind as an investor, that's it. You can't get around that. And so not only is there a stigma for people to get hearing aids, there's a stigma for investors to want to invest in this problem as well. That's starting to change, as I guess either we've learned to talk to the right people, but there's a big movement in age tech and longevity. I think people are starting to realize we are living longer, and the generation that is living longer actually has more money than the younger generation, and they may not have enough money. There's an interesting space right now in this older generation of longevity, and that's where investors are starting to say, wait a minute, this actually is a big deal. We should be paying attention. That's what's changed probably in the last few months. I don't know why or how, but that's sort of something we've seen. I can't speak to AR funding, but I can speak to that's my experience with this assistive tech space.
Yeah, I think I generally agree with that. One of the interesting things we found in some of our research is actually a lot of the younger generation, so millennials and younger, actually use closed captioning almost more than more than any other generation, strangely enough. And I know I personally use it. And I'm not traditionally hard of hearing, but I just prefer to watch TV with it on because my kids are running around, and like there's kind of temporary times when I can't actually hear what's going on. And so it just helps me to have that on. And so I'm not entirely sure why millennials are kind of leaning into that, but that definitely seems to be something that they're doing. And then it goes back to what we talked about a little bit earlier, which is just, I think it goes even beyond just like, just captioning these conversations. But one of the things we've been doing too is, hey, inside our glasses, can we summarize these conversations? So I've been in a 20, 25-minute conversation. I might have forgotten something somebody said 20 minutes back. Can I pull that up? Or can I just say, hey XRAI, can you summarize this for me? And it'll actually spit out like, oh, this is what you've been talking about. Here's like the salient points. So if I was sitting in a classroom and a teacher was teaching, like there's ways that this can be assistive technology that kind of goes beyond just like, all right, we're transcribing these things, and can actually assist you in different types of ways. And I think once you start tapping into that, that's where I feel like the business side of things kind of perk up a little bit. On the straight AR side of things, what I would say is, I think it was running really hot for a while, kind of cooled off for a while, but I think it's slowly building back up, right? I think there's if you look at the S curve for innovation, there's that trough of disillusionment that I think some companies were in for a while. And now what you're finding, and I think what both Alex and I mentioned, is as you start to find the utility of what these things can actually do and what these things can actually kind of build towards, that's where companies are starting to say, oh, hey, wait, that's actually really interesting. And that's what people should be using this for. It's not, maybe it is games, but it's not, it's not games, it's not entertainment necessarily, and maybe that's where it will be, but it's these utility pieces that you can kind of build off of. So I do think a lot of investors are kind of coming around on that.
Well, I'm almost out of time, so if you can give a quick answer to this one about translation, subtitles, and the glasses. Have either of you made inroads in this area?
Yeah, happy to go first on that. Yeah, so we actually offer translations on the glasses. So I don't have the language list in front of me, but it's kind of the standard EFIGs. So English, French, Italian, German, Spanish, Korean, Chinese, Japanese. So I think it's those 8 are the 8 big ones, are all supported. So basically you can go into the device and say, hey, I want whatever language is spoken to me transcribed into whichever one of those languages I prefer. And then as people talk to you, it will get translated into that language on device.
Well, the short answer for us is next. When we pivoted to go from cloud-based to local, to be really just building an appliance, we sort of had to think differently about which technology we're going to use. And so we're starting to develop our own speech recognition technologies, which is great and awesome and exciting and scary, but it's going really well. And so we're starting to look next at, okay, how do you then add translation to that? So we know we can, we're just not, we're not there yet. And so I don't have any details, but it was a great thread that you had the other, maybe a couple months maybe a month ago, Meryl, about Zoom and translations, and Zoom was holding back on offering caption translations, and they were charging for that. And your post was about, well, that's, what is that? Here we go again with Zoom charging for captions. And it's interesting because I never thought of translation as an accessibility feature. And then when I really dug into it and thought about it and learned about it, thanks to you, it was like, okay, what we're really talking about is enabling communication between people. And if there is a gap, well, then that is exactly what we're talking about, is you can call that, that is an inclusion gap. And so offering a solution to translate is, sort of fits under the same umbrella. So yeah, we're definitely interested, just sort of a day 2 feature for us.
Thank you both for coming, and thank you everyone for coming to this. And I know there's a few more questions that I will talk to Alex and Paul to see if they would be willing to answer them offline, and maybe I would post them on my LinkedIn and Thomas's LinkedIn so you can see the answers. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.